Hello and welcome back to Continental Club, where we discuss the hottest topics in European football. As you can tell, Henry and Mikey are here. We're not in our usual setting though, which is having a little bit of a refurb, a little bit of a winter do-up. So we're on the Monday Vibe set, but we've got a slightly different area, slightly different chairs. We've got a sort of psychiatrist lounge chair ready for you guys to, release all your problems onto me, the psychiatrist. McCubbs, are you well?
Yeah, I'm all right. Yeah. We are going to be working through some things today, aren't we?
We're talking mistakes.
Yeah. So yeah, it does feel apt in that sense.
Fresh haircut?
Yes, very fresh haircut again. Maybe there's a reason behind that. Deep down. I haven't had a haircut in 2 months, and it was getting. But it was a badly timed haircut though, because the temperature has just dropped, and on the way in today, I was like, I do feel colder.
Welcome to my world.
It's not like it's true, Diggy. You have to just put that with that all the time.
Your scalp's surely conditioned by now. Surely
I think it's ready for it. I also have such a thick amount of body hair that I think the head just likes being a bit free.
Yeah, and also like that, and also with you, the advantage that you have, Diggy, is that you can just wear a beanie and it's not going to mess anything up. So you can keep the heat in there.
Hat hair is no longer an issue.
Yeah. Whereas all I need to do is put up the hood of my jacket and it messes up my hair because it's all like curly and all over the place. But yeah, all good, Dukes. That was a very long-winded answer. How you doing,
Henry? You okay?
I do like this. Does feel like a morning chat show, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
On it. So yeah, no, it's great. This we can add this to the list of our sets from over the years. We've had a few.
We have
the fireplace.
We've had
Dulwich Tavern.
I think we had 3 separate sets that we had in the East Dulwich Tavern at some point.
That was really nice.
And then
it's been great
all over the gaff.
It has been great. One of the personal questions or the quickfire questions at the end is about our time doing Continental Club. So maybe we'll get onto that later. But as McCubb said at the top of the show, we'll talk about the biggest mistakes your club has made this season. I put it out on Twitter. There was loads of responses, but there is only one real place to start. I think it's with Pacey Stacey. One suggestion. What a name. Great
Pacey
name.
Stacey.
And he says Napoli's manager, or she says, actually with Stacey, Napoli's managerial appointments, Henry. Yeah. What an absolute mess.
I agree. Just quickly, the bloke who suggested Genk not re-signing Paul Onuachu, keep contributing those kind of answers. So
that's right in his wheelhouse.
Yeah, I love that. He's gone to Trabzonspor. He's scoring goals.
So from Southampton back to Trabzonspor.
No, he's gone. They bought him from Genk.
Yeah.
And then the Genk supporters really annoyed that they didn't buy him back this summer. And he's actually scoring goals over in Turkey. But yeah, I love that suggestion. That was so good. Weird it didn't make the show. But yeah, no, you're so right. Napoli. Wow. Baffling. I think when Napoli lost last week, to Empoli, was it? The writing was on the wall that they had been looking for any excuse. I think he's been sort of clinging on, Rudi Garcia, at this point in time. 4th in Serie A at the moment. I think they'll probably get through their Champions League group, but not in a particularly glamorous style. De Laurentiis coming out very publicly saying that Rudi Garcia doesn't understand Italian football anymore. I mean, it was a baffling decision.
I mean, you hired him.
Yeah. It's absurd. So he was there going, oh well, look at Luis Enrique. He's having a tough time at PSG. You'd still rather have Luis Enrique.
They tried, I think,
over Garcia, and even like Enrique's football would have fitted a bit better with the style of football that Spalletti had installed. Sort of heavy possession, lovely play. But yeah, Garcia. To give him his due, like in France, he has done some good things. Lille Cup, League and Cup double, long time ago. Still to have done that with that Eden Hazard sort of peak Lille side, that was remarkable. Probably a better Lille team than the one that won the league under
Gaultier.
Certainly.
Yeah, Gaultier. And then getting Lyon to the semi-finals of the Champions League. I mean, that was really the last great Lyon team, wasn't it? So
even then, it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was even a great Lyon team.
I agree.
Like getting quite an average Lyon team to beat Man City, like a really good Pep Man City, and get them to the semi-finals. Like, I think that's a really remarkable
Maxwell
achievement. Given what like has happened to Lyon since then as well.
Still had Bruno Guimaraes, still had Cacré,
and
Ndombele as well.
Yeah, no,
I think it was quite a good side.
But it wasn't. It still wasn't properly challenging at the top of Ligue 1, was it? Like, it wasn't doing enough, I don't think, to challenge PSG. And you have to give manager, what's Ndombele done with his career since then. I think you have to give Garcia some credit for what he was doing with those players. Yeah, I kind of think with this, really it just stems down to like, I don't think De Laurentiis did enough to keep Spalletti at the club. Like, I just don't think he did. Like Spalletti, the fact that Spalletti left to have like a break from football and tend to his, was it a vineyard?
Tuscan farm, yeah. He's got ducks, he's got wine apparently.
And then have his head turned by the national team job, which, yes, it's a huge job for sure. And like, it's hard to turn down, but he made history in Napoli, and for De Laurentiis not to do everything in his power to try and keep him at the club, maybe he did, and the working, and his time at Napoli, and he just felt like he had to leave. But like, I think that's it's a bit of a damning reflection, I think, on De Laurentiis and Napoli as an institution, that Spalletti, despite being pretty much immortal in the city, didn't feel like he could stay. Like,
well, it was they just triggered an extension on his contract without telling him, and he said, "Well, you owe me the
sabbatical."
Not even that, like the politeness. You owe me the you should be sitting down with me and talking with me. And it's interesting, actually, because this leads in. So Spalletti is quite like an emotional guy, and his Napoli team was quite an emotional side. It was really fueled by some big characters in that squad. If you look at some of the language, it's very romantic, sort of inspirational, some of the figures in the side last season. One of Rudi Garcia's problem is he immediately made the big players... he basically told them no one is safe in my system. Like, you're all like up for the chop. We saw that with him upsetting Kvicha and Osimhen early doors. I think with that side, like, it very much did stem around the superstars, and I think they had to feel that you have to like make them feel invincible in order to go on and achieve what they did. Like, Osimhen apparently is a huge motivational factor in that dressing room. He was the one that really believed that they were going to win the title very early on last season. So yeah, he alienated a lot of the big stars in that team, and the football just didn't really work out. He's been fired and what's interesting is the person they brought in, because there were links with Igor Tudor, who left Marseille. I was all over that. I thought, get Tudor in. I don't think that's a bad. He'd agreed with Laurentiis that he would adjust his 3-4-3 to a 4-3-3 in line with how Napoli wanted to play. He was willing to accommodate, because De Laurentiis wants to completely control the style of football that is played at Napoli from this point going on. But Tudor also wanted a contract which didn't last until the end of the season, and they've said no. So, and they've ended up with Walter Mazzarri, which I could not believe it when I saw this. The only thing I can say is he did manage Napoli for about 180 games in a previous spell.
Did well.
So yeah, exactly.
Long time ago, though.
Yeah, finished 12th, 6th, 3rd and 5th and 2nd. And that was not... Yeah, and you're right. That was in like the early years of Napoli's resurgence back as a top flight force. So Mazzarri does have credit in the bank in Napoli, and that will help him. The fans will remember that kind of influence. But I mean, that had a squad of Lavezzi, Cavani, Hamšík in 2011-12. So they're really, really like a formidable side by the end of that period. And to give him his dues as well, at this point in time, Mazzarri was like a big manager. He was a big manager at a big stage. I think also Inter Milan at points.
Then went to Inter, yeah.
Watford. Well, yes, and then
since he left Napoli, it's gone pretty down.
I'm not gonna begrudge any manager for doing badly at Watford. I don't think he was even.
I don't think he did do badly.
I'm
just saying, that's another esteemed club that he's been at.
It's true, but yeah, he's just been
mighty Hornets.
He's just been at Cagliari, and he ended up getting them relegated from Serie A, where Ranieri he brought them back, didn't he? So to go from getting relegated at Cagliari to snapping up a short-term deal at Napoli. It's interesting, in the responses to your tweet, Dukes, some people were saying it's better to have Mazzarri as a caretaker than Tudor on a 2-year deal. I don't know how I feel about that necessarily. I think you've got to give Tudor a chance. He's a more progressive coach at this point in time. This does feel like a very short-term solution. But it just makes you wonder, like, what is Napoli's aims now this season?
Top 4.
Just to qualify for the Champions League. I think they should be able to do that. They should. I think Inter and Juve look almost sewn in at the top 2, and then no one's really putting together a consistent run of form in the places below right now. It's really exciting, but I think Napoli should be able, with the players at their disposal. But I just worry for the long term. Like Osimhen, he's not signed this new deal as of yet. Kvicha, he's going to be getting itchy feet unless I imagine he gets a monstrous new contract at the club. Like, it does feel as if the to go from Scudetto winners, City on fire with joy, to this in less than 6 months is mental. I can't believe how the mood has changed in Napoli so quickly. So yeah, I think it's stunning. Like, good luck to Mazzarri, and there is a chance that we are wrong about this. There's a chance that he does do very well, and maybe they just need. We've seen it time and time again with managerial appointments. Maybe they do just need someone to come in who's not bigger than the club at this point in time, just to sort of play up to the players around him. But yeah, Rudi Garcia was an evident mistake at the time. Mazzarri is just a really lackluster appointment, which just shows where this Napoli side have gone, which in the space of 6 months from Scudetto to now is just shameful. And I think De Laurentiis, you know what, he was probably riding very high off his title success last year. He probably thought he was invincible at this point. You know, he's very, very proud of the fact he saved the club. He saved it from bankruptcy, and I think the owners sometimes have to take accountability for their actions. Like, they are owners for a reason. They're not footballing people. They're not the managers. They can't try and dictate everything about the club, and he has to take this on the chin and admit that he got this horribly wrong.
Yeah, he also announced Mazzarri before sacking Garcia on Twitter, which is kind of mad. Very sort of maverick. But yeah, I had a response to my tweet which sort of said that this was pretty uninspired from a Napoli fan who said, you know, I think he was about our age, and he said Mazzarri's Napoli side was the first he ever fell in love with. They're a very solid counter-attacking unit, that they qualified out of a Champions League group with Bayern, Man City and Villarreal in 2011-12. And I thought, you know, I'm glad that someone's excited for this appointment, but I think that is a long time ago. That is a long, long time ago, and his only experience post-lockdown is with Cagliari, as you say, and he lasted 35 games. And there's a reason that he hasn't been employed since, I think, May 2022. So for him to land at a club like Napoli, it's an amazing opportunity for him, but I'm totally with you. I think, yeah, this has got disaster written all over it. What I would say, though, is I don't really know what he's like as a man-manager compared to Garcia, but it's difficult to be worse, at least in terms of getting along with this current squad. So if he lifts the mood, picks up some few good results in the immediate future, then maybe they can pick up. But they've got a tough run of fixtures, and they've got Real Madrid coming up in the Champions League as well. So you just don't want it to go south really, really fast. But that's our thoughts on Napoli. Let's move on to another huge club that has had even bigger issues than Napoli this season in Ajax. This came in from Halmu XD, and he suggests Ajax's transfer business, McCubs. I mean, there are other issues behind the scenes, but it does feel like they really messed up in the market this summer.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, much bigger problems at Ajax. You know, they currently have, I think, an interim CEO, interim manager, and an interim sporting director. So, like, the whole club is kind of in limbo at this moment in time. They have picked up a bit more form recently. I still expect them probably to finish in the, I don't know, top 5 in the Eredivisie, but that's really saying something. You know, they've had the worst start in, Eredivisie history. And yeah, it does. You know, the summer has had a huge part to play in that. The key players from the kind of the last key players of Ten Hag's era were all allowed to leave, and the signings came in their place just weren't good enough, frankly. And it stems, it goes back to 2022 with Mark Overmars resigning in disgrace. Obviously Ten Hag leaving not too long after that. Then Edwin van der Sar resigned at the end of last season, and there was a bit of a shift behind the scenes. They brought in Sven Mislintat from Stuttgart, and he did do a great job. Brought him in as sporting director. So he didn't do a great job at Ajax, but he did a great job at Stuttgart, got them promoted, or helped them get promoted in his first season at the helm. You can credit him for players like Oral Mangala, for example, Borna Sosa, tons of talented players who've gone on to achieve great things either at Stuttgart or elsewhere. Wataru Endo as well, although I'm not sure whether he was it's an Lintat signing actually at Stuttgart, but nevertheless, that Stuttgart team, that Stuttgart team, has stayed in the Bundesliga ever since then, and of course doing brilliant stuff this season. And you have to credit Mislintat for laying the foundations of that side, the makeup of that squad. So he came with a big reputation. Obviously, was most famous for what he did at Borussia Dortmund in the Klopp era. I think he even preceded Klopp by a year or two. Ended up leaving not too long after Thomas Tuchel. Famously fell out with Thomas Tuchel as well during that time. So he arrived with a good reputation, but also, left Arsenal in pretty acrimonious circumstances as well. So a mixed record, especially in a sporting director role. I didn't realise just how much he kind of was effectively undermined at Arsenal after Raul Sanllehi. He came in and was effectively his senior there, and I don't think he had as much control over transfers as he would have liked at Arsenal. I think like Emery, he helped hire Emery, but I think Emery ended up having like quite a lot of control over transfers as well. Or there were certain transfers that he brought in that didn't really see eye to eye with what Mislintat's vision was for the club.
Don't know who was in charge of Socrates, but I do particularly remember that. I
think that might have been a Mislintat one, given that it was from Dortmund. So yeah, not a great record. Although did bring in Bernd Leno, who has gone on to have a great Premier League career.
Third best goalkeeper in the league, according to Marco Silva.
There you go, the third best.
Third best, yeah.
Well, I mean, he was the first best according to many people on this channel last year. Yeah. So there you go. And like stylistically, just didn't fit where Arteta was going, but I think would have probably remained at Arsenal and been a very decent keeper had that not been the case. Matteo Guendouzi as well, I think was a really, really good signing, despite the off the field issues kind of proving too much for Arteta as well, but like a great player. Nevertheless, let's fast forward now to Ajax, because this summer was a car crash. It was an absolute car crash, and I think what I was getting at was basically Ajax hired Mislintat, I think, to try and implement a more analytical approach to recruitment, because under Overmars, despite them having a really good hit rate under him, it was kind of it was a lot of it was a very contacts based thing. Great great recruitment in South America, but it wasn't necessarily the most sustainable approach, because when Overmars left, he didn't really leave a system in place for the recruitment team, which is a bit worrying, and not particularly sustainable, and and it's meant that Ajax have had to rely a lot on academy products. Their top appearance maker this season is 17-year-old centre-back Yoel Hato. Their top appearance maker. He's played more minutes than anyone else, despite them spending 109 million euros in the transfer market, which is the most they've ever spent in a summer. So they've spent more money than they ever spent in a summer, and yet a 17-year-old is their top appearance maker, and they're sitting 12th in the league, having been bottom of the league just 2 weeks ago. So yeah, and I think it was just so poorly managed. So obviously sold Kudus, sold Timber, sold Alvarez, sold Calvin Bassey, who didn't have a great season, but still one of their big kind of outgoings. Davy Klaassen left on deadline day for free. Florian Grilic left for free. Dusan Tadic, and I think this was the most damning one. Dusan Tadic, was allowed in the end to terminate his own contract because he felt like the club wasn't moving in the right direction, and the quality in the squad wasn't good enough, and the signings weren't good enough. And when your captain is terminating his contract because of that, a guy who really embodied Ajax's success over the last 5 years, that is a really, really damning reflection on the direction the club has gone in. And of the 12 signings that they made in the summer, 5 of those were signed in the final 2 weeks. Let's remember as well, Mohamed Kudus was sold with about 5 days of the window remaining as well, so not much time given to finding a replacement for him. But also of those 12 signings, I think only 3 feature in their top 11 appearance makers this season. So even of the signings that they've made, not that many of them have been trusted. I think it's only Van den Boomen, who is was very well proven from his time at Toulouse, one of the most productive midfielders in France over the last 2 years. Josep Satalo, who's brought in from Dinamo Zagreb, and Benjamin Tahirovic, who's brought in from AS Roma, 20-year-old defensive midfielder, who is very highly rated.
That's the thing; they're all highly rated.
Yeah,
young talent.
Of course. But generally speaking, Van den Boomen's very experienced. But I think the fact that Tahirovic has played so many minutes is probably because of the fact that Edson Alvarez was sold. I mean, that whole midfield was, completely gutted,
rebuilt, yeah.
and they haven't really had much of an option there. And even someone like Borna Sosa, who I thought was a good signing, very much a Midland-Tat signing, a Midland-Tat player, hasn't played all that much. Someone like Chuba Akpom, you thought like this was a really good move for him, hasn't really happened for him either. When you have this much of a squad turnover, even at a club like Ajax, who have a reputation for being able to survive, max exoduses, it's not a given that it's going to be conducted in the best manner, and Mislintat clearly, was not the right man for this job, and in some ways you feel for him a little bit, because he entered a club which had a complete power vacuum and probably not much of a direction from above, especially with Van der Sar leaving. I think it's a club that has been a bit confused over the last year or so, especially since the departure of Ten Hag. And Maurice Stein, bless him, like he was undermined by Mislintat. Mislintat was fired after effectively calling for his sacking in the dressing room. They've now got John van Schip in place as interim until the end of the season. And to be fair, he's won 2 and drawn 1 in the league. Lost to Brighton at home in the Europa, which is, not the most, it's not the worst result for them this season, but they are.
Looking at the lineups, I saw them line up and I was like, this looks like it's. I mean, Brighton should win that now.
Yeah, okay, they've done the double over them.
That's crazy, isn't it? Yeah,
it is mad. But they're bottom of their Europa group. Doesn't look like they'll make it through. They're 5 points off Brighton, who are second with 2 games to go. They're 12th in the league, like I was saying. And even though they've had a bit of an uptick in form, they drew on the weekend to Almere City or Almere City. I'm not sure how to pronounce that in Dutch, but they were only founded in 2001 and are playing their first year in the Eredivisie this year. No disrespect to them, but like Ajax should not be drawing with them.
Even Go Ahead Eagles are 5th in the Eredivisie this year. I mean, it's kind of nuts.
I mean, I wonder where Sparta Rotterdam are this season, because
they're in the same
they're still in the same place that Maurice Stein got them to last year. So I mean, in terms of like falls from grace, like I can't think of many in the last few years as dramatic as Ajax is. They genuinely were like top.
They were like
5,
an example of how
6.
to be run.
Yeah, I mean they were top 5-6 clubs in Europe under Ten Hag, really. Like especially that 2019 season where they got to the Champions League semi-finals, like beating a really strong Real Madrid side 4-1 at the Bernabeu
as well.
I
think they beat Juve as well.
Juve on that run, and and remained competitive and remained a really good footballing side even after those those players. You think even between then and now, Lissandro Martinez, Edson Alvarez have come through the club. Kudus, like the list goes on. It's obviously a really sad state of affairs, and ultimately I think. I think someone like Sven Mislintat could have done a good job at Ajax had he entered a more robust institution, but it just feels like Ajax has just been eroded in the last 2 years, and throw someone like Mislintat into that, and it obviously has not worked out well at all. He's obviously out of the club now, but like he ultimately has to take responsibility for that summer, and it was a car crash summer.
A lot of these signings, like you say, great move for Chuba Akpom. I think these are all great moves for the players.
For
the
players signing from Metz and Man City's under 21 side.
So that's the thing. They've got Brian Bobby up front.
Mm-hmm.
To add in Akpom, don't get me wrong, had a great season at Middlesbrough, but after a pretty nomadic career, went to like PAOK and did a few bits, and Mikotadze as well from Metz. I think it's a lot of responsibility to go to a championship player and a lower level Ligue 1 player and go, right, you're going to be Ajax's starring forwards. It's tough, and like the average age of their signings is ridiculously low. Take out Akpom and Van der Boomen, and it's around about the 20 mark. A lot of these guys had not played many first team minutes at all. I think with this Ajax team, it's potentially a 2-3 year rebuild project when we start to see a lot of these players really mature and get the best out of them. But they've asked a lot of guys that have not played a lot of top-level football to shoulder the weight of the club, and as we've seen with the fans, they're not. They are pretty formidable.
We haven't even got onto that.
Yeah, they cancelled games by flowing flares. When you've been so used to success, and then you see this happen, like they are going to kick off. Like I'd actually say the Netherlands their kind of fan culture is one of the most kind of volatile. We've seen that in the last few years with Alkmaar, etc. So yeah, I think we need to give this Ajax team 1 or 2 years. But yeah, the transfer policy has been really bizarre.
Well, they need to, well, I mean, we need to give just Ajax as a full club like time to rebuild itself. Like I think their CEO, their new permanent CEO, will be in place from March. So I mean, it's just like it's a waiting game really. And even then, who knows? You know what direction they'll go in, or whether he'll be able to, rebuild, or how quickly he'll take to rebuild. But yeah, no, I agree. Like the thing is with Ajax, you always trust that, whoever the young players that they bring in, however experienced or inexperienced they are, that there will be a system in place for them that will allow them to thrive. But that's just not in place for this Ajax side, and it's different to rebuilding Stuttgart, isn't it? It's just it's a much bigger institution.
Absolutely, yeah. It is a bit of a shame though, because I always feel like a strong Ajax leads to quite a strong Europe. Like that academy is so excellent. Yeah. It's probably only rivaled by sort of Benfica in Europe. Anyway, let's move on to It's Ya Boy's suggestion of Bayern not signing a centre-back or right-back and loaning out Stanisic. Talking about their window as a whole, I mean, it's difficult to criticise it too much because they did obviously sign Harry Kane, which has gone spectacularly well. 21 goals and 7 assists in 16 games in all competitions. Absolutely superb. Amazing to read in The Athletic this week about how he's respected in that Bayern squad. He's so humble, but yet plays for the team in a slightly different way to Lewandowski. They think that he's not just out for individual honours. He's really doing everything with the idea of winning and for the team at the forefront as well. They added Kim Min-jae, who I don't think has been spectacular so far. To be honest, he's not been a disaster. Konrad Laimer's had to play a lot of minutes actually so far. He's actually 6th for minutes. And Rafael Guerreiro, who's only just come back from injury. But their sales have left them open to a few injury issues. I think Sommer and Nubel were both sold and loaned, which meant Sven Ulreich had to start the first 8 league games. He did okay, but he didn't really excel. And then also at the back, they sold Luca Hernandez, they sold Benjamin Pavard, they loaned out Stanisic, and they didn't really sign a backup right back, a backup centre back as well. So they've only got 3 centre backs, and they were looking at Trevor Chalobah, weren't they, later on in the window. He's now injured, so perhaps that dodged a bullet in that respect. But they have left themselves open at central midfield as well, where they're not very deep as well, with Sabitzer joining Dortmund and centre-back as well. And it means that Goretzka, Mazraoui and Kimmich have had to fill in at centre-back at various points this season. The thing is that it hasn't really affected them so far. I mean, they've only conceded 9 league goals, which is the best record in Germany, slightly ahead of Leipzig, and only 3 sides in Europe, which are Nice, Inter and Juve, have conceded fewer. But it does feel like a few injuries at the back, a few injuries in midfield, which inevitably come around February, March time. It feels like Bayern's transfer business has left them a little short. The only thing is that they do obviously have January, so they've got to muddle through till January. And then I would be surprised if they didn't go again for João Palhinha. I mean, he's talked this week about how much of an honour it was and how it did affect him, that move falling through, as it would do. I think it might have affected him more mentally than his performances on the pitch, because I actually think he's been really good for Fulham again this year. But it does feel does feel like they'll go back into. I mean, his tackles and interceptions have gone from 5.6 a game to 7.5.
That's crazy,
which is mental. And his progressive passes are also up. He's scored some crucial goals for Fulham as well. It really is kind of a one-man team.
He's a beast. In the middle of the park, he is so dominant. It's actually quite frightening. If teams can bypass him, then they beat Fulham. That's basically it.
But it does feel like that sort of failure of that transfer committee to get the players that Tuchel wanted at the end of the window could come back to bite them. Has it come back to bite them too much so far? No, but is the balance of that side still quite right? I don't think it necessarily is. I mean, we saw them concede 3 goals against United in the Champions League. They conceded over 25 shots. I think it was against Galatasaray. Copenhagen took the lead against them as well. So they're by far from the perfect defensive side just yet, in a very different way to Tuchel's Chelsea, who are always much more dominant defensively than going forward. But to be fair, Sane's playing so well, Kane's playing so well. It's
interesting seeing Tuchel get so frustrated in the media talking to Sky Germany, because he was kind of saying, well, look, we're second in the league behind a good Leverkusen sides. We're top of our Champions League group. We're scoring goals. Okay, they're at the Pokal. He was like, he's basically saying, why is everyone having a go at us all the time?
It's such a unique situation in that they are just by far the most talked about club in that league. I mean, even in La Liga, there's 3 clubs, particularly 2 clubs that dominate all the airspace. And in England, one of the biggest clubs in the country is completely irrelevant right now in Man United. So it just feels like there's so much focus on Bayern that every defeat, every Pokal exit is such a big story. But it just takes a bit of getting used to, I think. Right, let's move on to New Age Purist suggestion of Lyon. Now, he says Lyon getting rid of Aula and selling to John Textor. I don't know whether you can count...
Well, Ola selling to John Textor.
Well, exactly. You can't really count that as getting rid of him so much. But he was supposed to stay on as president for a bit longer.
Yeah, that's the thing.
He was like in an honorary role, wasn't he?
He was meant to be there for 3 years, I imagine, to oversee some kind of transition. Let's bear in mind, he was there for a very, very long time, Aula. It was...
Into his third decade.
In sort of De Laurentiis style, Aula, there are some owners that become very known within their club. I think Aula was very much his Lyon side that won everything. The league 7 times. That was like his. Did
a lot for the women's game as well.
Yeah, absolutely true. So, for him to have gone after 3 months or whatever it was, is difficult for John Textor, who's sort of walked into a storm. He paid 900 million euros for Lyon, and his project. They're now bottom.
It's quite a lot of money in French football, isn't it?
Oh, it's a huge amount of money. But that, as you say, I think that's like the women's team as well. It's a big...
The whole project.
I mean, the potential upside, I think Lyon will be a force again, but it just will take a long time and a ton of investment. I think there was a lot of optimism originally about John Textor taking over, because I think Ola... it's not not too dissimilar from when Berlusconi first sold Milan. It was kind of he's a kind of football businessman from another era. He just can't compete with necessarily the superpowers of European football in this day and age. And John Textor, in terms of someone who's invested in multiple clubs and stuff, represents the future of football investment, or represents the here and now of football investment. So it did. There was logic to it, but it does seem, the fact that Ola has left so quickly, I guess doesn't bode well for Lyon in the short to medium term. Especially, I mean, if God forbid they were to get relegated this season, that would be an absolute disaster for Textor's immediate investment.
I don't think it's even necessarily Textor's fault what's happened to them. I mean, the summer business, essentially, Lyon, due to everything that's happened with the Mediaset deal that collapsed in France, the curtailing of the league, their lack of European football, Lyon have a big black hole in their accounts, and they've had to sell players. They made an 87.9 million euro profit this summer. More talent, another year of a talent drain out of the club, and it's not just talent drain. So Barcola, Lukeba, Favre, which hasn't worked out at all, Thiago Mendes, but even sort of staples of that side, similar to kind of Ajax losing sort of the senior heads, Husamawa, Dembele, even Toko Ekambi left last season. They've lost a lot of the guys that had held up that side for a long period of time, and another wave of young talent. Apparently, they're trying to... Their scouting of younger players and selling them for profit is just way worse than a lot of their rivals that are just have finessed it a lot better. They're really struggling to identify sort of decent young talent in the market, and are having to basically just fall back on their academy. And some of the players at the moment, like Kakare, who's looked good, but he's in danger of not fulfilling his potential at this moment in time. And it's just, on the pitch, things have just gone horrible. They still shouldn't be bottom.
No,
they still shouldn't be where they are with the squad that they've got.
Lower mid-table, probably.
Even Chele Tassar at centre-half, you're looking at a hugly high-rated...
Saliso, Lebanon...
Exactly, Lacazette, okay, he's ageing out, but he scored, 30 goals last season. He's got 3 this term. But it's not been good. The fans have been on them, and I've never seen a fan group sort of capture the imagination of the players and almost have them... that's twice this season that guy's been had Fabio Grosso.
They just go up and listen to him.
Yeah. Almost. It's what happened to Grosso is an embarrassment for football. There was an absolute shambles. I almost hope that incident.
Well, that was Marseille fans.
I know. But I hope that incident grounds this Lyon sides and makes them realise what on earth is going on.
The fans, getting the players to, giving the players a telling off and things like this. I think that French football is, it has been incredibly visceral over the last 2 years. And that kind of fan power is can be a problem at clubs. It can massively be. I mean, we're going to get onto Marseille in a little bit, but how's that worked out? Marseille fans basically pressuring the club to hire Gattuso
and to get rid of two managers.
Yeah, it's like it goes too far. Like, it absolutely does go too far.
Absolutely. I mean, just to quickly finish on Lyon, Jake O'Brien, got in, fair play to him, scored a goal, good for Irish football. But I'd never even heard of him. You know, and then,
ginger centre back.
Yeah, he scored in a very nervy win over Rennes. I'm glad they've got that first. When you saw how much they celebrated at the end, it looked like a real release of tension in that side. And yeah, they're rated as the 11th best side in France by expected points. I do think they'll be fine, all said and done. And there is at least a relegation playoff, so it's not doom and like you can at least finish third bottom and be okay. So yeah, Aular, obviously, I don't think he's been helpful on the sidelines since he's left the club. It's a lot of been biting back and forth. John Textor, to the sounds of it, Botafogo, that's his big Brazilian club, part owner of Crystal Palace too, which may explain the Luke O'Brien link. But he's kind of pleading for time. He basically seems to infer the club is too heavy, sort of like the way that Elon Musk has gutted X. He seems to say like they could be more streamlined, and he's just trying to sort of stabilise the club in that regards behind the scenes. I think it's going to take a lot of time, and even he probably didn't expect the turmoil on the pitch. But I mean, Lyon need to get back to being a European club. That's the bottom line. They need to be entering those markets, accessing that prize pool. They're lucky at the moment. They are one of the the biggest teams in France, have a pretty established fan base, so they can't just rely on that long term. They need to figure out a way to get back to the top of the table, and that's tricky because French football, I think, at the top end is getting more and more competitive. So yeah, really difficult times for Lyon. I don't necessarily think getting rid of Aular though is the problem. I don't think he would have solved their footballing problems on the pitch, although their transfer business at the end of the window, selling their young players, Barcola like a day before the window shuts, that was really silly, really silly. But yeah.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. Right, we don't have that much time before Henry has to go to a meeting, so we're going to race through these final ones. McCubs, Jonathan David, should Lille have sold him?
Yeah, potentially.
This came in from @2real for you, by the way.
Potentially, yeah. I mean, he's had a pretty bad season, and given that he'd progressively become more impressive as his time at Lille went on. He signed in 2020, and there were question marks over the signing, I think. 13 goals in his first campaign, 15 goals in 38 appearances in the second, and then 24 last season, and he really looked primed for a big move. But this season, he scored just twice in 12 appearances so far. His shots have dropped to 2.3 per 90. His XG per 90, which is the most concerning one, has gone from 0.67 to 0.36. So it's basically halved. And 0.36 is around the level he was, around the kind of amount of chances he was getting on the end of in his first season at Lille. So he has regressed so far this season, at least. He was even dropped for their games against Monaco and Marseille, big games. Wow. Reinstalled for their recent 2-2 draw with Toulouse. But he hasn't scored in domestic competition since August. His last goal at all in any competition came in September in the Europa Conference League. And given that Lille, had a reported €60 million price tag on him in the summer, it feels like a bit of an opportunity missed, I think. Again, Lille haven't had the best, financial situation over the last few years as well. Milan were really interested in him in the summer, but that didn't end up happening because they only wanted to loan him. Milan, famously over the summer were pretty reticent to spend anything more than 30 million on any player, and they'd already signed Okafor from Salzburg as well. There was talk about West Ham being somewhat interested, although that went pretty quiet pretty quickly. Like Jonathan David, he was primed for a move, and I think Lille would have been primed to get 40 or 50 million from someone, but I think that asking price was too much, and now they've got a problem where his contract's up in 2025, so he'll be available for a lot less next summer, and if his scoring doesn't pick up, then he could be, there could be no one really interested in him for more than 30 million euros, let's say. But having said that, Lille generally are fine. They're still fourth in the league. Their defence, although Paulo Fonseca got them playing great football last season, one of the most exciting attacking teams in the league, that has dropped off this season, but their defence has remained really, really solid. They're still conceding the fewest shots in the league, like last season. I think by expected goals against, they're third in the league. But yeah, at the other end, it has looked a bit more bleak. Their shots are way down. I think they were second in the league for shots last season. They're now 11th. Their top scorer this season has been Bafoli Diakite. He's their centre-back / right-back who's on 3. They've got 15 league goals, and that's been split between about 8 players. So at least there's goals around the side. But without someone like Jonathan David, they've kind of without someone like Jonathan David scoring at the rate that he was last season, they've it's kind of gone from what would be this team has gone from what would be title challengers to European hopefuls. So in that sense, maybe it is an opportunity missed. They could have reinvested that money from David in another up and coming striker. I know that the striker market is pretty bleak at the moment, but again, that's what makes it even more dumbfounding that a suitor wasn't found for David in the summer. So it's a difficult one. I think they probably thought that David was going to carry on at the same rate this season. It hasn't happened. So he could
go on a tear. It's early days.
He could, but the way that the team is playing, attacking wise, suggests that David isn't getting the service. He's clearly not getting the service that he needs. For sure, I back him to hit double figures in the season, but he's not. Lille were expecting him to hit 20 plus realistically if they were to keep hold of him in the summer. So you can't blame them too much, because when you've got a prized asset like that, you want to gain maximum value out of them. I guess maybe it goes to show that maybe last season was a bit of a one-off rather than his actual level. And if perhaps the Lille hierarchy should have seen that more.
Fair enough. Right, quickly, I'm going to talk about Union Berlin. This came in from Basher Boy. Urs Fischer, the big news this week, along with Rudi Garcia going, fired by Union Berlin on Wednesday. Really sad. Took over the club in June 2018. At that stage, they'd never played in the Bundesliga. They just finished 8th in the Bundesliga 2. He got them promoted, then finished 11th, 7th, 5th and 4th. Reached the semi-finals of the DFB Pokal, reached the knockout stages of the Europa League. Done pretty well in the Champions League this year, considering the sort of group that they're in. I mean, pushed Real Madrid really hard in that opening game. What was that, 94th minute winner from Jude Bellingham. Got a point away in Naples. But this year, just results haven't been good enough. I mean, they've lost 13 of 17 games. They've lost their last 9 in the league. They haven't scored in any of their last 4, conceding 12 to Stuttgart, Werder Bremen, Eintracht Frankfurt and Bayer Leverkusen. So a tough run of fixtures, but it's just deserted them all sorts of form. I mean, they're now bottom of the Bundesliga. And you might say, what's gone wrong? I would suggest that last year they were kind of the XG freaks in many ways. They had the worst attack by expected goals last year. They had the 4th best defence, ended up finishing 4th. They were never very high on possession, pass accuracy, but they had a really effective style of play. They had a club and a fan base that were really unified and pushing in the same direction. But this summer, I don't think they necessarily made the wrong decision, because they had to sign players with Champions League experience. I think that would have overall helped them. They spent around 30 million euros net, so they didn't go crazy. They brought in Robin Gosens, who's played really well, Diogo Leite, Volland, Toussaint, Bonucci, and Aronson and Fofana on loan. I mean, Bonucci hasn't worked out. Toussaint's barely played. Aronson similarly barely played, just started 4 league games. Volland only 2. And Robin Gosens has probably been that only summer signing that's hit the ground running. But it is sad. It is really sad. It's kind of end of an era, one of football's best stories coming to an end. But we'll see who the next Union Berlin manager is. We don't have that information as we film this at the moment. So hopefully they can rescue themselves and end up finishing mid-table. But guys, we want to hear from you. Which of those was the biggest mistake so far this season? Let us know in the comments down below, and let's move on to our quickfire questions. Before we go into quickfire questions, let's quickly review what happened in big match predictions last week. So Dortmund versus Stuttgart. I said 1-0 to Dortmund. Henry said 2-0. My Cubs went 1-1. It was 2-1 to Stuttgart. Dortmund's defending in that was an embarrassment. So no points to any of us. Lazio versus Roma. My Cubs backed Lazio. Henry backed Roma. I said 1-1. It was 0-0. 1 point to me. Really disappointing game, that. And then Sevilla versus Betis. We all backed Betis, and it was 1-1. So no points to any of us. So scores going into next week's show. My Cubs is on 18. I'm on 15. And Henry with work to do on 8. Right, let's do a couple of quickfire questions, but we will have to do them quite quickly because Henry has to go. This one comes in from KViz511. The ideal next club for Jadon Sancho. Henry, back to the Bundesliga. There's talk about Juventus. What do you think?
Oh, I wouldn't go to Juventus. I mean, I don't hate that, but they don't play. I don't think he would have a highlights reel going to Juventus. But you know what? To give Allegri his credit, like they are second, and
defending very well.
Carlo Garganese on Twitter is sort of having to wrestle with his. Keeps calling him a dinosaur, and yet they are a second. So yeah, I don't think that Juve would be cool, but I think in principle a return to the Bundesliga. The problem is then where Borussia Dortmund. Apparently he talks to Terzic quite a lot. Apparently he's got a good relationship with Terzic. There's talk that if he joins, Bino Gittins would maybe go out on loan elsewhere, which could be a fun pickup for a lower club than Borussia Dortmund. That might be nice, but at the same time, his levels of professionalism at this point have been questioned so much. Is that really what Dortmund need in their dressing room? But also, he's got something to prove at this point. He really
desperately needs to get his career back.
He needs to go somewhere and look incredible. And the Bundesliga, the way they play football, the sort of back and forth nature of that division, is probably the best bet. Could Bayer Leverkusen take a punt on him on loan?
Yeah, I don't play so well on the right hand side. I wonder whether Leipzig, because Emil Forsberg's supposedly going to New York Red Bulls, and Xavi Simons is only on loan. So I wonder whether Leipzig is actually quite a clever destination for him. I don't know what you think.
It's not the worst shout. I mean, I feel like Dortmund is the safe bet.
Back to familiar
territory where he made his name, and under a manager that he's worked under before, and also the fact that the wing, the left and right wing positions at Dortmund, there's a lot of competition there, but they're no way set in stone. And I think Jadon Sancho coming back and regaining confidence. I think he would absolutely start for them, and I think they're also nowhere. I don't think they've dropped off anywhere near as much as we thought they would have in the kind of post-Haaland, Bellingham kind of era, as it were. I think that would be a really solid. He just needs to. He needs to sign for a Champions League club where he's going to play. And he it gets on well with the style of football. He definitely would do that at Dortmund. He probably would do that at Leipzig as well. I like the Leipzig shout, but I think he can't. I don't think he can necessarily afford to drop down too much. Yeah. I think he needs to go to a Champions League club because that is his level.
I wonder about a club like Benfica.
Ooh.
It's a little bit maybe. To go from Man United to Benfica is maybe quite a question of where you're at.
Monaco or even Nice. I actually think of Sir Jim Ratcliffe coming in. If they were in a push for the league and still by January, I wouldn't be shocked if he went on loan to Nice. Benfica, that would be wild.
That would be fun. Right, next up we've got Richie, series of numbers questions. Your favourite non-Premier League game you've watched this season? I'll give you guys a moment to think about that. I'm actually going to go with Bayern Leverkusen 2, Bayern Munich 2, which was exceptional. Late drama. Bayern then took the lead in the 90th minute, I think. And then Bayer Leverkusen equalised late on. That was really high quality. I was babysitting, so I was up for a good game. The baby was asleep. I had my pizza, I had my beer. I had a great evening. I really enjoyed it.
That's probably up there for me, actually.
I really enjoyed Union versus Braga at Union Stadium. The Bruma goal and then the last minute winner. And then the whole stadium actually just bouncing. I know they didn't like playing at the Olympiastadion, but to see 70,000 guys just losing their marbles over there was
I also really enjoyed Real Sociedad Benfica the other day, where they nearly scored 4 in the first half. That was a lot of fun. McCubs?
I think Champions League wise, I think Milan PSG was great. I think to see. I think just watching this Milan side in Europe have been quite interesting actually, and especially to see them do that to PSG. Obviously a lot of heightened emotions in that game, especially with Donnarumma playing in front of the the Curva
Sud?
Forgive me, I got that wrong. But I thought that was really excellent performance, and especially to see someone like Ruben Loftus-Cheek really step up in a game like that was cool. And to see PSG crumble at San Siro was pretty fun as well.
Absolutely. Partaban 95 says your favourite Continental Club that you boys recorded. If there's anyone standout episodes, I think the East Dulwich Tavern was probably peak Continental Club. That was really nice.
I feel like our first few episodes at the East Dulwich Tavern felt pretty good because they were like
coming out of lockdown.
2 years of filming, behind behind our
those
in our
lockdown
dead
clips
bedrooms.
still come up though, because that's when Henry said his Vinicius Junior quote.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
And
that's
also
what
the
I
haircuts
well,
in that is absolutely mad.
Yeah, they are wild.
You had
That's-
so much hair.
That's when I had the Griezmann cut. That's when I had the Griezmann hair.
And quite
yeah.
a big beard as well. And Henry had a big beard.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. I do remember your beard, Henry. Yeah, and weirdly, it was in lockdown that this lineup actually became set in stone, wasn't it? Before that, it was a bit more of a mishmash. So yeah, I think the especially the early days at the EDT were really, really fun.
Freedom.
Those were pretty good. I'm just trying to think of if there's a specific episode. We've just done so many, haven't we?
We've laughed and laughed, haven't we?
Yeah.
I will say, if you haven't already, the one with Pat a few weeks ago where we ranked the best player in the world from every age group, that was quite funny just because Pat was on full unhinged.
He was in his final week mode, wasn't he? Yeah, absolutely. It has been epic. It has been another epic show, hopefully, at least from our perspective. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. If you have, let us know your thoughts about biggest mistakes and those quickfire question answers. Where should Jadon Sancho go? Let us know in the comments down below. If you've enjoyed this, get excited for Sunday vibes on Sunday. We've got another epic episode coming your way. Have a great next few days, and we'll catch you soon. Bye-bye.